Hi, my name is Sherry, and I'm doing a project called Tricky Ground Shadows. It's from How to Cheat Photoshop, page 166 through 167. Um, you're, there are two different sections of this project. It's a couple of different techniques that can help you create a shadow if you have a specific need that 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 these particular techniques addressed. The first one we'll use on this toaster, and in that you will be selecting out a section of this object, and then you will move that selection to a different layer and color it black, and then make that black by techniques, make it look more like a shadow, and then put it between the object and the background layer so that it becomes the shadow. And on the other project, we'll be painting a shadow on a layer that's between the background and the object. And that particular technique is nice if you are trying to create a shadow for an object that needs to reflect multiple light sources or diffused light or various, unusual or more complicated lighting effects in the shadow. Okay, we will start on this one by going to the toaster level, targeting that. Then we're going to use the polygonal tool, lasso tool, to make our selection. You just click and drag, and it can be a little messy at the top, but we need to be more specific as we do the bottom parts. We're going to leave the little foot here, little bumper on the bottom corner here, because they want us to practice erasing that because they don't want that on there. So we'll have it on there and then we'll have it off. And then we get to the top, we'll join those together. And there's our selection. We're going to take this selection, press Control and J, or the cloverleaf and J if you're on a Mac. And that will put you on a new level with that. Let me hide this. The toaster level there, I'll put that above it and hide it so that you can see this new selection. And this we're going to fill. So we'll go ahead and target this new object on its own layer between that and the background. And we'll push Control and click on the thumbnail for the object, and that will select it. And then we're going to come over here and make sure that black is selected because we want to fill it with black, and find the paint bucket and the tools. And if you don't see the paint bucket, look behind the gradient tool and bring that over and fill our areas of our selection. They don't have to get all the tiny areas at the top because they're going to be behind the toaster anyway. And then we'll go ahead and deselect that, Control D, and we're going to grab the eraser that's right above the paint bucket. We'll have a radius of 10, an opacity of 100 for that, and we'll just go ahead and come in here and erase. Alright, and the next thing that we're going to do is make it look more like a shadow. We're going to go up to Filter. We're going to go to Blur and Gaussian Blur. And I'm going to make that a 10 That's why it's already on that setting, but just so that you see, if you bring it, the slider up and down, that affects that. I'm going to type the 10 back in here, and I'm going to select OK. And the other thing you can do to make it look more like a shadow is come over here on the Layers panel, go to the opacity, going to do the drop down and the slider. Like that is 70 right there. I'm going to make it 78. So I'm just going to put an 8 next to my 7 there and make it 78 specifically. Alright, now we're going to move the shadow down a little and show the toaster level. So I'll go ahead and use the arrows, move this shadow level down, maybe over a bit so that it's where I want it, and Control D for deselect it, and we're all set. So, on to the next project. We're going to go ahead and on this project, we are going to paint in a shadow. And this time we will actually have to add our own layer. So we're going to select the background layer, press down here, create a new layer, or add a new layer. I'm going to name this layer Shadow. And that layer is now in between the background and the clock. So what painting I do on that layer will not bother the clock. So what we will do then is get a paintbrush. I'm going to select up here under the patch tool and grab the paintbrush. If you see the pencil or something, the paintbrush would be in that same area. And then we'll come up here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have a soft one, but I'm going to start out with a 50 because I'm going to do some darker areas. It actually says it says to go with a 40% opacity, but I found that to be just going in too dark, so I'm just going to do 20 because you can always add more, but it's pretty challenging to take it out very well, very effectively. So I want to make sure that I am targeting the shadow level, because that way I won't paint onto my clock. I'm going to go ahead and make some darker areas under here. Just keep going back and forth until I've got the amount of darkness that I want. Maybe a little behind and under there. I'm going to pull out these, put a little shadow behind the legs. Going up in there. Alright. Because these real dark areas I won't be able to get really to put that depth in once I make it a more opaque. I mean, have less opacity. So I'm going to you can click or click and drag. You want to it's better to go subtle and add a little later. Okay, now what I did is I went from there to 100 on the width of that brush, and then brought this down to 10 for the next part of it, because and then start going over that, and I'm going to bring that out a little more, but just carefully, maybe make a little dimension in that direction and in that. Soften the edges here a little in certain spots. You can click or click and drag to add things with it. Now what you can then do is come in and make an opacity of 5 to just make just a little bit more subtle stuff. Click, or I'm just going to tap in these because it's just way too easy to get too much when you're getting to this real light area. Now, something that to keep in mind is if you end up with a little bit too much in an area, you have to be real careful with this though, because it gets kind of, it's way less controllable to go in with there's two things you can do to lighten up areas if you got something too dark. You can either come in and change your opacity on the level, or you can get the eraser tool. But to do that, I would suggest going with, once again, the wider feathered thing, and actually go to like 100 or something, 50 to 100. No, actually, I think I went to 60. Let's try 60. No, let me check here. Yeah, 60 and 10% or 5% opacity when I experimented was. So I'm going to try 5%. So that's real faint. But you could kind of just tap in to take out if you want to just kind of remove a little from someplace. If you go into like right in these kind of areas though, it can make where you actually see the circle, and even at that opacity level, it's just a little tricky. So anyways, and another thing, if you took that opacity and you changed that, you can see how that would make the shadow lighten if you didn't like how dark you had gotten. So that is the second technique. So to summarize, we had two techniques. If you, obviously you can do your drop shadow, but in the special effects. But if that's not working for you, for the effect you're looking for, you can make a tracing. Select an area and create your own shadow that's specifically to the shape of that area, and do that here in on a layer like we did on this, and then add the Gassan blur and change the opacity to make it look more like a shadow. And then the second technique, which is really a cool technique, it's just kind of, it's a little harder to get used to, and you have to practice it, but is to paint in that shadow. And you do that on a separate layer in between the object and the background. And you want to go real light on your opacity of the brush, and do a real soft brush, kind of better to oversize it than undersize, and better to make it lighter than darker, so because it's easier to put it in than it is to take it out. So thank you for listening, and I hope that you will find some of these techniques to be useful, and you have a good day. Thanks. Bye.